Erin Snow, our clinical director, is here this week with us. So she and Dr. Rob alternate. So welcome, Erin. Always great to have you here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, Erin, the first question we have, put my glasses back on. Betrayed partner D-Day was July of last year. Husband stopped acting out online only, July of last year. He is almost 70. Is it possible that porn-induced erectile dysfunction could be permanent? It has been over a year of abstinence. So perhaps you can talk about porn-induced erectile dysfunction and then answer the question too.
Yeah, so porn-induced erectile dysfunction is not permanent and it shouldn't be permanent. So if that is, what that is basically the dopamine hits that are coming from the intense stimulus of pornography or whatever other acting out behaviors has created neural networks that now the body, in order to function properly, needs that same level of intensity and dopamine to get erect, essentially. We find various length of time where that part of the issue goes back to normal when someone's in recovery. Obviously, at his age, there could be other things at play, right? There's multiple reasons why someone could be having issues with erectile dysfunction. And I always say it's good to rule out any actual medical issues, hormonal issues. Some guys, too, after they get sober, have a lot of performance anxiety just blocked by their own shame, that they're not able to kind of engage intimately the way that they were before until they work through some of the shame and emotional issues. So no, porn-induced erectile dysfunction is not permanent and it should not be permanent. And once someone is in recovery and those neural networks are being desensitized back to kind of a normal level, they should be able to perform. But again, that can be linked to so many different things. You know, in treatment, we rule out a number of those things. And yeah, at his age, there would be some medical and other hormonal things to rule out as well.
And I want to talk about, because she talks about abstinence. So he hasn't acted out for a year, and that is abstinence. That's merely not doing the problematic behavior, but addressing those issues that Erin was talking about, the shame and all of those things, addressing the why do I think I need that massive dopamine hit rather than connecting with my partner in a real and meaningful way. Those issues are not going to be addressed by just stopping the problematic behavior. So that would, if he has not just stopped, but also been doing recovery work, 12-step meetings, our drop-in groups, our online work group. We have a Sex Addiction 101 starting this Saturday. That's a really good, and Porn Addiction 101 also starts on Saturday. So that would be August 31st. And we offer those regularly, but those are courses that will help, have a plan, and move forward in a different way. Separately, I just shared with someone, we have the attachment wound work group starting again in November. And Dr. Eddie does the going deeper. That'll start after the first of the year. So there's lots of different things to do to address those issues of why I was looking at this rather than addressing the issues here. So just stopping the problematic behavior isn't going to be enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Abstinence is abstinence, right? It's the absence of the the compulsive acting out behaviors, but it doesn't necessarily mean healing has happened or the underlying issues have been addressed. Or so whether he's in therapy or really in recovery and addressing those underlying issues, I do see sometimes a pendulum swing with guys who go from compulsively acting out to like almost sexual anorexia because they're so scared of their own arousal that they would rather not be aroused at all, even if it's in relation to a partner, because they're afraid of like waking up the beast, right? And that if I allow myself to be vulnerable in that way and allow those feelings to come back in, then I'll lose control again. And so it's really, when you're working with a qualified professional and you're able to kind of address some of that, it really can help put intimacy back in the relationship when the time is right. Because I do see that. We had guys that were sober for 9 years and really, like, obviously they're sober from porn, masturbation, any kind of acting out, but also sex with their partner. And I'm like, that is not our goal. Our goal is healthy sexuality. Our goal is to get you to a place where you can experience intimacy with sexuality and you don't use sex as a way to numb out and in a way that's shameful and harming of yourself and others. So It's just something to throw in there.
So speaking of that, we have a healthy intimacy work group starting tomorrow. I'm going to put it in the chat that you will find on our website, the Seeking Integrity site, under the work group tab. But I'm pulled that one up specifically. We don't run that one as often as we do like Sex Addiction 101 or Porn Addiction 101. So if read the information, if that feels like a fit, that could be a good next step as well.
For men in recovery. So I actually think it's super helpful because guys get sober, but then it's like, how do I reintegrate in the relationship? How do we move forward? What does healthy sexuality look like? And how do I begin to learn about that? So it's amazing. And I think more guys would benefit from, okay, I've gotten through the crisis. I've gotten into like early recovery. And now what do I do?
Yes, one of them is have a better understanding of emotional and sexual intimacy, but also learn the difference between intimacy and intensity, which porn addiction or sex addiction, but porn addiction in particular is intensity.
Right.
Okay, Erin, the next one. I'm the betrayed partner. D-Day number 1 was a year ago, and we have had 3 D-Days total. We have been in COSA and SA, respectively, since the start of April. Sex addict partner has individual therapists and just started seeing a CSAT as well. My sex addict partner isn't all into our relationship. He's sober, in recovery, working with therapists and a sponsor, but he's very avoidant and still isn't sure if he loves me or if he wants to live with me and our baby. We have briefly engaged, but he changed his mind. We were briefly engaged, I'm sorry. Every week or 2, he questions if he really wants to be with me. Is this normal for the sex addiction recovery? Or is this a separate issue that needs to be addressed outside of the scope of sex addiction? It's hard for me to stay through the repeated infidelity, let alone the back and forth with him about commitment. I can only understand. I can only imagine how difficult this is. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. My heart breaks for you because you're carrying the weight of the whole relationship. So you're doing your work, he's doing his work. But to have someone that's hurt you so deeply, then say, I don't even know if I want to be with you. It's like you're trying to find, what am I even fighting for? Because I'm fighting to get through this betrayal and this crisis and get over and find a path forward, and you're not committed. So I would say, no, this is not normal. And yes, this is a separate issue. Many of our guys, so a couple of things that come up. You said he's avoidant. Like, I find a lot of our sex addicts are avoidant, attachment style wise, which means I trust me, I don't trust anyone else. If I let somebody in, I'm allowing them to entrap me, to suck me in, to take away my agency. And that typically, obviously, is formed in childhood. And so he likely came to the relationship as an avoidant, and especially coupled with someone who's anxiously attached, which I'm not projecting that on you. I'm just saying that oftentimes, statistically, that is the most common pairing, unfortunately. That, in his process of getting into recovery, his avoidance is being triggered because he's looking at the wreckage he's caused. And I don't know if I have it in me. A lot of those guys do fantasize about, like, what would it be like just to start over and not have all this baggage? And it's like, well, you caused the baggage and you have to get out of it, but it is not normal. No, a lot of our guys that are in paired relationships that are committed after D-Day, they are absolutely committed to figuring out the relationship. If they get to that point and they're like back and forth about whether I want to be with the person or not, then, that tells me there's greater relationship issues, valid or not, that he sees as an issue moving forward. But I don't know. I can only speak for myself personally. That would be a deal breaker for me. I would not be able to like shoulder the pain of betrayal, especially with a baby, to then have a partner that is wishy-washy about whether or not he even wants to help heal and that he's committed. That would be a deal breaker for me. Because what an additional slap in the face, what an additional like rub of salt in the wound. I'm committed to recovery, but not so sure about the relationship. He he is verbalizing and he is showing with his actions that he is not committed to doing the work that you are needed to heal and move forward. Yeah, I would be moving to separation, honestly. And I say that knowing that it is so much easier said than done because of all the pain, the trauma you've been through, and that you know, be a mother of a child, and there's logistics and there's finances, and there's all kinds of things tangled up. But to have someone that's not even willing to commit to you, yeah, that would be really hard. I don't know how you would have a path forward if you weren't even committed to a path forward. So I'm just really sorry, and I want you to know that there is support for you. There is, you know, many women out there that are in the same boat that can support you. And I hope that you have a good therapist yourself, because this would be really hard to navigate. And you have to focus on what is it that I need to have my own back, because he is not someone that can show up for you, and you're not going to get that source of support from him. So being able to say, okay, what do I need to do to get strong, and say enough. I've already been willing to go through 3 disclosures in a year, and 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 now I'm faced with, you don't even want to commit to me, you don't want to, like, then you got to figure out, what do I need to get stronger? And that's boundaries, that's a mental health support, that's a community, a tribe around you. I can't sing our praises enough about our empowered women retreat. We just went on one 2 weekends ago, and in this moment, like, it brings tears to my eyes how incredible that experience was, because the women looked different after. They came in heartbroken or angry or, you know, focused on the problem, and they left feeling empowered and in their bodies. And I feel like this would be something that's so powerful for you, because I just want to show you that there's another path, and maybe that path doesn't include him, and you'll be okay. As hard as it is, you'll be okay. But I wouldn't stay for someone that isn't committed, especially after all the pain they've caused.
And I will post. So Kristen Snowden and May did a should I stay or should I go? And I will post that in the chat, but it was in May.
It was really
and
good.
Separately, it was really good. It was like 10 questions, and there's never any judgment. Like, this is always, we're just trying to give you information and resources. So there's 10 questions, and journaling about that. Here's what makes me mad on your behalf. I'm like, first of all, he dinked around for how many months? Like I'm just angry because, you know, now in April, after, like, you started this a year ago, and so he waits till April, and so now there's been this really small window, and he can't quite decide if he wants in or out, and he gets to make all the picks, and I'm going like, why does he get, you know, to make the decision? Like, you know, to me, I'd be like, you know, buddy boy, like, you need to do these things, and if you want to be with me. And I know it's easy for me to say, but I'm mad for, you know, I'm mad at him for you and for your child. And, you know, he's not showing up. Now, Dr. Rob often does this, the come here, go away, come here, go away. And so, like, that's so addict of like, oh, I want you close. Oh, no, I don't. You know, and especially if he's got an avoidant. But I'm going like, healthy boundaries for you. What do you need to do to take care of you and that amazing child you have? You know, like, you will be fine. You know, but having him doing this and dysregulating all over the place, I mean, that's just so painful for you. So no, oh, one more thing. We have a Moving On Alone drop-in group on Thursdays, and that is for women who have been left, or have one foot out the door. So it's like, you don't have to be committed, you know, but it's like, it's a different focus than some of the other groups where more people are looking on healing the relationship. I vote heal the relationship with yourself. I mean, like, I can only imagine how difficult this is with a baby. Like, oh my gosh. So
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
To you. Big hug from Tammy and Erin.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Next one, Erin. Betrayed partner. My husband was in treatment at SILA in July, and he was all in on committing to the relationship. I was hesitant because he didn't care about mending the relationship before treatment. Now that he's back in the environment, he is back to not knowing if he wants to recommit to the relationship. I'm left brokenhearted with these drastic swings, and I'm not sure what I should do or be doing in my life.
Yeah, another one. So that to me, I mean, we just covered this, but like that to me would, I would be moving away from the relationship. Um, I would be getting really strong on my own. I would be doing lots of self-care. I would be, joining a group, and I happen to know who this is, and I'm so grateful that you are. Because first of all, obviously I understand in treatment, a lot of our guys do shift a lot because they were not even aware of their denial. They were not aware of how they were gaslighting themselves and others. They had so many layers between them and the truth, and blocking them from experiencing any kind of empathy, right? Their own shame, their own defensiveness. So it's common for guys to leave and be very different than they were when they came in. And we expect that and we hope for that. But to come out and be super committed and then to change again, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but what I would say is that that is too much trauma compiled on trauma. That's an additional wound. That's more abandonment. That's you're in here trying to fight for something in a relationship where majority of the population would have bailed a long time ago, and you're willing to stay and work through it, and they're over here saying, yeah, I don't really know, or I'm all in and then I'm all out. That to me would just be additional trauma that I could not handle. I want to be regulated for my kids. I want to be able to show up to work and focus on what I'm doing. And when I have complete chaos going on like that, I'm not able to be the best me. So if nothing else, even if you don't make a decision about what you want to do, I would put space here and get really safe and get a lot of support and get into your body and do a lot of self-care and set the boundary with, look, let's take some space. I'm not willing to do the back and forth. So let's take some space. In 90 days from now, we need to make a commitment on what it is we're doing. But in the meantime, I cannot be engaged with you and be working towards this. And when you're changing your mind, because it's not fair to me. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's not fair. So I'm sorry to hear that. I know obviously who this client is. It pisses me off. I want to strangle him. I won't. Because you are a phenomenal woman, a beautiful soul, and you deserve to begin your healing journey. And it's hard to do when you get whiplash decisions where you have to turn on a dime and it feels like it's day one all over again. I don't want that for you. And I know there's more context under the hood than what is in a paragraph, but I would just say get some good advice on this, take some space and heal yourself, because no one wants more trauma dumped on top of trauma.
No, and unfortunately, like the come here, go away, come here, go away. And I'm sad when addicts get to have all the say, like, with all due respect, it's like, oh, I'm not sure if I want you or not, like, honestly, like we should be begging you guys, like, I'm willing to do whatever it is I need to do in order for you to be willing to, keep me. Like, it just blows my mind. So this feels like really a bunch of steps backwards on recovery, so to speak, kind of going back to what we were talking about with the last one. Like, this is still early in the journey, and the more someone is leaning into the recovery plan, and anybody who comes to Seeking Integrity has a really solid aftercare plan, and if they're really, really following that, then they're sharing this kind of stuff in our alumni groups, and they're doing the work so that they can, get some clarity and other input, because this is the problem that got me into treatment in the first place. So my thinking is all this wishy-washy stuff, and so, but I'm really sorry. But so yes, healthy boundaries for you. Take care of you. You are amazing, and we want you to have
And
good care.
another big hug.
Hug from us, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, they're interested in your opinion on the partner's view on the way we feel about emotional abuse from our sex-addicted spouses. This seems to be a hot topic. Some people are doing he's an abuser, the offender, so And we've clarified before with like, there is the behaviors are abusive, but
Yeah.
but saying you're an offender. So I think that's the
Yeah.
crux of it.
So emotional abuse is emotional abuse. I mean, if they are lying, gaslighting, defending, saying mean things to you, like manipulating, all of that's emotional abuse. And it should not be tolerated. So, I mean, my thoughts on it are pretty clear. Emotional abuse, whether it be from a sex addicted person or a non-sex addicted person, is not to be tolerated, and it's not acceptable in a relationship, and boundaries have to be set around that. When it's a sex addicted partner, you have the additional layer of their behavior being abusive in a number of other ways, right? Violating our physical health, violating our the relationship trust that we built over years, the contract that we created, whatever that is, spoken or unspoken, marriage or not. There's a understanding in a relationship that we're either monogamous or we're not, or this is acceptable or this is not. So that contract's been broken as well. And so that's abusive in itself as well. So ultimately, what I come to is just, yeah, I mean, it's not to be tolerated. And there needs to be boundaries put around it, and it needs to be something that is absolutely addressed. I think it's more common for our clients, our sex addicted clients, to be emotionally abusive because they are hiding, they are lying, they are filled with shame, they are filled with anger, they hate themselves often. And there's no way to be your best self in a relationship when you're in those conditions. Addiction itself is inherently narcissistic, right? You get all those traits that come with it because they're protecting this like skeleton in the closet. But none of it is acceptable, period. And I'm hard on our guys in treatment about this specifically. Like, is this really the man you want to be? Is this what your value system? Is this you wanted to be like your father? All the things you hated about him that you became. Like, I'm really hard on them because no, none of that behavior is acceptable. Period.
And you can't, Dr. Eddie, I pointed out his webinar from last September often. You can't make that unhappen, but what do you do? Here's where you are now. And so how do you both each move forward? Now, in the two examples above, we had partners who are like, it's not okay what's happening to them. I would consider that emotional abuse, but what do you do with that? Because you got an addict who's doing whatever. How do you as a partner choose to move forward and heal for yourself? And that's, we really focus on that at the Empowered Women's Retreat. So, we have another one, October 24th through 27th. I put the link in the chat too. Okay, you mentioned separation. Do you have thoughts around when therapeutic separation may be a good idea versus not a good idea? And can you talk about what therapeutic separation is versus just separating?
Yeah. So separation would just be we're physically separating and there are no guidelines, boundaries, or rules around what that is. Therapeutic separation is done with the intention of accomplishing goals, right? So there's boundaries, there are, who's living where, how are we going to communicate, what are we both individually working on, what are we working on together. The goal is to, in that time of removing you from the environment that seems to be constantly triggering and like we're stuck in this rut and we can't get out of it, can some separation allow for more individual work to be done so that the coupleship can actually get back on solid ground and move forward? Or some decide in that therapeutic separation to move on. But the thing with therapeutic separation is it's therapeutic for a reason. It's usually set up with a qualified professional. There's boundaries, there's guidelines. It has some accomplished goals in it, right? And what you're asking is like when therapeutic separation is a good idea. I think when you get to a point where you're stuck, we can't get out of the cycle of communication that seems toxic, right? I'm being triggered or he's being triggered and we're screaming and yelling at each other and we're not making progress and it's been going on for too long and we need some space to be able to figure ourselves out and figure out how to re-engage in a healthier way. I think therapeutic separation is a good idea when you have a partner that is not engaging in recovery as you need them to, right? And so they're either relapsing or slipping often, and it's challenging to stay in a relationship with someone where your therapeutic separation can be part of the boundary, right? And maybe that's part of the setup of the separation, is that my need is for you to do X, Y, and Z in your recovery so that I feel safe to re-engage in living together, right? So you can use therapeutic separation also just as a way to say, this is the only way I'm willing to move forward, right? And this is what I'm planning to do for myself during that time. I'm planning on doing self-care and seeing a therapist and working towards some of the things and processing the hurt, the betrayal, the trauma that's coming up for me so that I can engage in a healthier way. Yeah, so I do think that majority of the time therapeutic separation is with the goal of trying to reunite at the end of that. Obviously, there's boundaries set up so that if these things don't happen, it's made clear to me that your actions are showing that we're not safe to continue a relationship together, right? It's not meant to go on and on and on and on and on for years. It's meant to be shorter periods of time to really make some progress and have some clarity to make some decisions. Yeah, so I think it's a good idea. In most cases, honestly, I don't think there's a scenario where I'd say that is a very bad idea. Because I think it's really revealing on both parts how we take care of ourselves, how we engage in our recovery when we're not in each other's space all the time. Because that's where you can get some of that, just the cycle you're stuck in, right? So, yeah.
So talk about, like, because I hear, and I'm sure you do too, partners that go, if he moves out of the house, or if we move away from each other, I'm worried he's going to go do whatever. And I'm using genders here just for clarity. So, so talk about that, please.
Yeah. So that's not a reason not to do a therapeutic separation. And here's why. If they are going to use your therapeutic separation as license for freedom to go and act out and hide and lie and all the things, then there's your data. There is your answer. If they need you to be a comfort blanket, to be your monitor, to be their parole officer and their mother in order to stay sober and be in recovery, then there's your answer. I understand that because I've been there myself, and I understand the fear of, well, if they're not around me, how am I going to know? You'll know. Trust your gut, trust your intuition. You're watching their actions. Are they engaging in all the things they said they're going to do? Or do they show up when they say they're going to show up? Are they being defensive and angry and avoidant, and they're missing therapy appointments and they're missing meetings? And like, you have the data, but being afraid that they're going to use that as a reason to go and act out, then there's your answer. I mean, I know it's hard because it requires us, the betrayed partner, to like sit in the discomfort of not having control. And that's really scary when we're always afraid the other shoe's going to drop. But what I've learned is that the sooner I could let go of control, the sooner he actually took accountability for his own recovery, not because he's checking boxes for me. Because that, in the end, does not promote a long-term, internalized locus of control where they say, I'm doing this because I need this. I'm tired of myself, versus I'm doing this so that my wife is happy every day that I did this thing. I think it can be really good, especially for avoidance, to take personal accountability for their recovery and for their life. But I do get the fear and I get the anxiety.
Okay, and it is hard, but like you talk about control, but I'm like, it's an illusion of control. Like, you ultimately have no control over anybody else's behavior. Look at a toddler. You have no control over somebody else's behavior.
I have one, and yeah.
I know, that's what I was saying. So. Okay, next question. When to walk away? I'm the betrayer, separated 2.5 years, and I'm seeing a CSAT. We are both also seeing someone together, as well as she is seeing someone for complex trauma. Disclosure done and presented to her therapist and her by myself and my CSAT. She still doesn't know if she wants to try and rebuild. but tells me she hasn't ruled out a reconciliation. I feel like life has stopped for both of us.
Yeah. That's hard because like I wouldn't recommend a therapeutic separation for 2.5 years unless a lot of this other work, like seeing the CSAT and disclosure and all that happened more recently. I would say that someone's got to make a decision about at least are we going to try? You know, we call it like a safe harbor where you're in a relationship where you're just saying for this period of time, we're doing work on ourselves, we're doing work on the relationship, we are not acting out, we're not engaging with other people, and we are attempting to see. I mean, I think it would have to be like asking the question, what will it take? What do you need to see from me to feel safe to move forward? Right. And have that be something concrete, right? Because otherwise you're at 5 years and it's still, I'm not really sure. And we don't want life to stop for both of you. We want you both to be able to heal and move forward and either, you know, reconcile or consider what it would be like to move away from one another. Um, so yeah, Tammy posted Kristen Snowden's webinar again. It was really good. It's 10 questions around whether to stay or go. And I thought it was extremely insightful. But I do think there does have to come a point, and I'm not putting a timeline on a betrayed partner's healing. Let me tell you, I know it takes time, but this comes with the commitment. And maybe there's, if you asked her, what is like, what hangs in the balance? What am I not doing? And what could I do to show you that I am committed in recovery and ready to move forward? What is it going to take to feel safe? Right. Because I don't know if you don't have some path forward, then it kind of just lays in this ambiguous place of like everything's on hold. So I would try to see if your CSATs can come up with here are some concrete steps forward toward reconciliation, or hey, I'm not sure there will ever be a time that I'm willing. And 2.5 years later, I'm still not ready. You know, it may be there's a barrier around, I'm just afraid of letting go and being done, but that's really what I want. So there needs to be, I think, a conversation, an honest conversation about what's it going to take. And is there ever enough, right? There might not be. And that would be good information to have because I don't recommend that couples stay separated for years and years and years. It's like, I want you guys to either be able to kind of get the path of healing or move on and be able to be healthy, uncoupled.
Yeah, well, yes, limbo land, for both of them. You're stuck in, and I often use the nothing changes if nothing changes, and that's usually about, the addict not getting the help. But I'm going like, gosh, you guys are stuck, and it doesn't sound like there's a plan of like this, and this, or like at a certain, time frame or whatever that, we're gonna make a decision. So yeah, you could be at 5 years and have this be the same. So, but I hate, that that you're feeling like life has stopped for, and it probably does feel like that. You guys are stuck. So I love all the suggestions that Erin made for possibilities. Okay, so much of the content in Dr. Rob's video speaks to the sex addict and acting out with porn and sex outside of the marriage. I have had all of this in the first 10 years of my marriage. However, in the last 10 years have been complete withholding of sex after having had a radical prostatectomy that rendered us impotent. How does Dr. Rob, Erin, speak to this without us to this withholding as it relates to the sex addict spectrum, or is there a different approach to take with a husband like mine? Also, I clearly see that he's active. No, I'm sorry. Also, I clearly see that he is in active addiction without acting out financially, having just found out he's created a lot of new debt, as well as using many tactics of blame shifting, denial, etc. That's a lot.
Yeah. So obviously there's a lot of things contributing to, I mean, prostatectomy, right? Rendering him impotent leads me to say, okay, you have to decide what can we do and what can we not do? Like, what's the actual limitation here, and which parts of this actually later are emotional or active addiction or some other barrier that's preventing us to have physical intimacy again. 10 years is a long time. And we've had clients that have said 30 years, and I'm like, oh no. I mean, So I would say, first of all, yeah, you have to see whether or not, like, is the person in recovery? Are they, because if he's blame shifting, in denial, hiding and lying about finances, like that is not recovery. Recovery is transparency, integrity, honesty, and connection. So I would wonder first about that. Like, is he in recovery? Is he seeing a therapist? Is he actually, you know, sober, but also really invested in the underlying issues? Okay. The second part around sex, I mean, I think that you have to first recognize, what's our physical limitation here? Is this due to his prostatectomy? Is this due to him withholding because there's relational issues? Is this due to, that sexual anorexia pendulum swing I talk about, that they're just so afraid of their own arousal that they just don't go there? I don't know what all those layers are, but I would say you got to, bring this to the therapy room and really say, first of all, I think you need a medical evaluation. What is possible and what is not possible? Because you can work with that. Even if somebody is not, there's intimacy can happen in a number of ways, right? It doesn't have to be, sexual penetration. There can be a number of ways to sexually engage with one another or have physical intimacy, along with emotional intimacy. But it kind of sounds like neither one is happening. So that leads me to wonder, like, what else is going on in the relationship? And I would like to see, both of you seeing a CSAT and also addressing this potentially, if you're 10 years in recovery, like seeing a sex therapist at some point. If you feel like recovery is established, he's doing well,
But
which
he's not.
that I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. No, because she's saying he's acting out financially and he's still blame shifting and denial and everything else. So this feels like he can't physically have sex because of the radical prostatectomy, and he's shifted to other forms of of acting out. So
Which we see a lot. We call it like the gopher game, where, you put one into remission and another one pops up. And that's, to me, a sign that you're not addressing the underlying issues. Why do I need to numb out? Why do I need to lie? Why do I need to do these things? And actually healing that part of yourself allows for all of these things to be addressed in a holistic way versus just one. And then there's these other that flare up because you're not addressing the underlying engine that runs various addictions, right? The root is the same, and the expression is different. So yeah, I think that this is multiple layers to it again, and it's complicated. But I would say he's got to address the relational issues in terms of his own addiction. Like, what is he doing? Lying, hiding, creating new debt, being in denial, blame shifting, all of that is not going to promote physical intimacy. So to me, that comes first. Physical intimacy comes once there's trust established in the relationship and you feel like you can now move to that arena where physical intimacy can be discussed and worked on. You could see a sex therapist, you could work out, like, how can we be physically and emotionally intimate? But you have to arrest these other behaviors first. Because how can you create relationship trust and bonding and intimacy when someone's still lying, blaming, spending money that you didn't authorize? Like, that doesn't feel good to me either. So yeah, multiple layers here, but I think you have to start with the behavior that's in front of you. And again,
yeah,
I wouldn't
go
stay
ahead.
in I would struggle to stay in a relationship where, 20 years, 10 were acting out all over the place, and the last 10 is like complete absence of physical and emotional intimacy, and he's still behaving in a certain way. I would be talking to him about residential treatment.
Well, and exactly, because just because he can't act out sexually, he still probably would score on the sex addiction, and we treat things holistically. So we get lots of guys that come to our residential treatment program who have stopped the whatever behavior, but they're still a hot mess. They're still lying and doing all of the underlying issues. We talk about dry drunk is like just not drinking. That's the top layer, is the stopping the acting out behavior. So that doesn't make somebody a nice person all of a sudden because they've stopped the problematic behaviors that they were never supposed to do in the first place. So this is so. And stay or go, zero judgment, on any of that. So when we talk about this, please know lots of people stay for lots of reasons, but if you're going to stay with someone who's in active addiction, what do you need to do for your healthy boundaries to take care of you so that you are not, dysregulated and, suffering. We have people who have medical conditions as a result of the betrayal and this dysregulation and everything else. So how do you take care of you in a relationship, under a roof with someone who is in active addiction, whatever form it's taking? And that could be, alcohol, shopping, gaming, gambling, whatever it is,
Food, workaholism. Yeah, all of it.
Yes. Yeah. So the next question is, do you have a webinar recommendation for addicts who are having a lot of trouble being honest with themselves? A webinar, as much as I love them, is not going to change an addict who is struggling with being honest with themselves. That is called accountability. What do we need to do to have accountability? Our online work groups, I've already put links in there. Sex Addiction 101 is if they haven't taken that series, that would be a good place to start. But, out of the doghouse for those in a relationship, I mean, it's like, how do you build trust? You don't lie, what do you need to do? 12-step meetings. We have bunches of them. We did a webinar on 12 steps, and that would be a really good one, as well. But I, as much as I love our webinars and our podcasts and all of those other things, they're passive. There's no accountability. You can watch this and, move on, and take nothing with you, being in the opposite of addiction is healthy attachment. And we learn to have the accountability with peers first. That's why we say we need, partners. Get your tribe. Addicts, get your tribe, for healing. So it's like, that's the accountability. But if you're a partner of someone who's doing this, Debbie McCrae, her 4-part talking boundary, and we've got webinars on that. You can't change the liar, but you can sure, say, I know that's your reality. So please check into those. And we talk a lot about that at the Empowered Women's Retreat too. A great place for healing for for partners. So,
and I think it's important to note that, like, obviously addiction comes with lying, hiding, shame. But there are also like compulsive liars, right? That lie outside of the realm of addiction, right? They're not just trying to hide their addiction. They lie compulsively all the time. And we found with these guys that this started in childhood. So I almost think, for when you notice, like, I lied about going to Taco Bell versus McDonald's. I lied about how long I was at the gym. And I lie before I even take a conscious breath. I think there are roots in childhood where you have to go back and learn, when did I learn to lie to protect myself? And then it became so routine and so that there's not even conscious awareness half the time, right? So there's always corrective action, right? Go back and tell the truth within 24 hours. Like, there's all of that. But I think sometimes liars that feel like, I lie in every domain of my life to everyone, there is a purpose and there is a root there that if it's addressed, you can actually upend the system. So I tend to think even attachment wounds, inner child, like, there are ways to begin to explore and address that. But those people typically have roots in childhood that they learn to lie to protect themselves in some way. Because telling the truth meant loss of attachment, which at their age meant death. And so it became what they did in every area. And those are hard people to be with, obviously, and they're hard people to be. So yeah, I would say dig a little deeper under the hood, because it's not just, how can I be honest with myself? It's like, where did this start? Where was the function of the lying? And really starting to change those core beliefs and underlying conditions.
Yeah, but even the accountability, it's like we talk about, slow things down. Before I tell the quick lie, which is at the tip of my tongue, what do I need to do? I need to think it through. And that's how we learn to do things differently. It's like, okay, what is going to happen if I tell this lie? Yeah, I will feel better in the moment because that person won't be mad at me and they won't know. And then they're going to find out, and then they're going to be really upset. And all of these, we have to learn to do things different. And yeah, there's always, like, I'm looking to escape some negative consequence in this moment, thinking that I'll never have to pay the price. Well, it's worse, it's worse, like Dr. Rob often shares too, that the clients that come to our program, many of the spouses are going, like, the behavior is hard, but it's the lying that it's about everything. And Dr. Rob shared in Out of the Doghouse the example of someone who got a divorce over he lied about taking out the trash, and it was like, but it was just the trash. But she was like, if I can't trust you to tell me the truth about the trash, how could I trust you with anything else? So, but yes, as Erin's saying, all of this stems from brokenness, and I often say, if you picture a little person, male or female, before the age of 10, and something happened, along the way, and they're using this, and it's hurtful to partners. We 100% understand that, but they're using that as a maladaptive coping mechanism, and it's worked for them. Like, Erin was talking about, it's this or death. Well, okay, I'll choose this, but then, they have just this swath of wreckage in their path, from relationships that are hurt, including themselves, so there's always more, but for partners, a boundary around, like the lying, it's like, okay, I know that's your reality. For part talking boundary, Debbie McCrae has modeled that. I love that one. So, okay, the next one, Erin. Farmers farm, teachers teach, ministers minister. Why are we separating? Abusers abuse and told we are not welcome if we have that opinion? I'm not 100% sure. It seems like a silly, hurtful distinction and putting more pressure on the non-addict spouse. So, Erin, I'm reading like farmers farm, teachers teach, ministers minister. Those are all professions. And I don't know of anybody who gets paid to be abusive. So, so maybe you have some thoughts on how to.
Yeah, I mean, and we've gotten into this discussion, right? Yeah, somebody who has abused could be labeled an abuser, right? Absolutely. Just like someone who has used drugs can be labeled an addict, or sexually acted out can be labeled an addict. It's not that we disagree that somebody has abused. What we have found is this. I can say I'm in recovery from substance use, and I can get a pat on the back, and I can get like a good for you. That it's found its place in society, especially with the opiate epidemic, even Betty Ford coming out with alcoholism. Like, it's taken many decades for people who have a substance use disorder to be able to be out in the light sharing their story. Sex addiction does not have that. So if someone says I'm a sex addict, right? People immediately, due to the stigma, go to, you're a pedophile. To this day, I mean, almost all of our clients are terrified of even sharing with certain family members because the response they get is like, hide your kids, right? So we're just trying to use language that allows for our clients to be able to get out into the world and find connection, find other people that are like them, and be able to share their story. I mean, this is a longer process. So I don't tell our clients, like when they come in, maybe in our treatment center, they may identify as an offender because their behavior had non-consenting victims. But a lot of our clients never were offenders, right? In other words, all of their acting out partners, etc., were of age. They were consenting partners. It didn't make it right, but that's who they were, right? Someone that's been emotionally abusive, right? Someone that's been, so it's like going out in the world and saying, identifying my being as, I am my behavior. Like, I am a liar. I am an abuser. Now they have abused, they have lied, those things are true, but is it all of who they are? I would say no. And all I'm trying to do is create a world in which addicts can actually, over time, the stigma is dropped and the education goes up, and that we recognize that these people are redeemable too. They've done horrible things. Trust me, I fight my own countertransference in a lot of our cases because I'm just like, how could you do that to her? How could you do that to him? I understand, but I also believe, and I wouldn't be in this room if I didn't believe that these clients had a path to recovery and healing, and that the source of this is brokenness. It is typically trauma. It is typically attachment. It is, it leads back to the same places as substance use addiction, etc. So while I'm not opposed to it, and I'm not going to kick someone out for wanting to use that language as seeking integrity, we've chosen the language of compulsive sexual behavior, sex addiction, Like that's the language that we choose to use, not because we don't think somebody has abused somebody. But when someone identifies as an abuser, someone immediately goes to, you're a child molester. So it's just about context in our society. It's not about taking away or putting pressure on the non-addicted spouse. Like I think, are huge advocates for the betrayed partner, for them
I know
having
we
a
are.
voice, for them, for holding these men accountable. We just choose to do it in a way that allows for a path for both to heal, that both are able to redeem themselves if they choose a path of healing and recovery. So that's all. And I know we get hung up on like the language of it when really it's not about, we don't disagree with what's underneath the label at all. I mean, we talked about it in this webinar. It's just about choosing to label someone in a way that identifies their whole being as something that can't be different. That's all.
And we share resources. If there is domestic abuse and violence, you like there's a whole
Not
hotline. There's
acceptable.
police. I know. Like call the police. You have to, we advocate for you for doing that. But yeah, anyway, okay, next question. And they were worried we wouldn't get to this one. How can we do a therapeutic separation with kids, a 5-year-old and 10 months?
Yeah. It's trickier, isn't it? So there's a couple of ways people have done it. Some do in-home separations, right? Where we're choosing, but I'll tell you that there's very few couples that we've worked with that actually honor the boundaries when it's an in-home separation. Very few couples do it well, but it can be done. We've seen couples that when they have kids, they choose that, the addict maybe lives with a family member. Obviously you have to consider finances and resources and all of this, right? We've seen other situations where the kids stay in the house, but the parents rotate in and out, so that the kids always have a stable environment and they're not having to move anywhere. Or that they're always living with one parent and the other parent has scheduled regular time, even as a family. A lot of therapeutic separations allow for family involvement. Like we go on Sundays, this is what we do. But you really have to consider in your personal situation, like what is our resources? Do we have another availability of residence, or do we need to do an in-home separation because that's our only option? And who's going to help us really draft that up so that we can be successful at that? But it's absolutely more challenging with kids. I've been in that boat. I went the in-home separation route, and it's hard because you still see each other. I found myself having it be harder to separate from control, right? When it's right in front of my face. But we worked out a situation and some back and forth that worked for us, where our kids felt really stable and loved. And honestly, they didn't even really recognize what was going on. But if you need to do out of home, you do your very best to developmentally discuss that mom and dad are working on being the best mom and dad that we can to you. We love you. We will always be there for you. And you present as a united front no matter what.
So the next one, my partner is a sex and porn addict. Prior to discovery, he had anger issues since his teens. These escalations can include yelling, cursing at me, throwing things, breaking into inanimate objects, storming off, and initiating breakup. During the course of our relationship, he's come off of both Adderall and Clonidine, reduced caffeine, and greatly reduced marijuana consumption. Since discovery 12 weeks ago, his anger has gotten worse. He has now also punched a hole through the door, ripped a drawer out, slammed chairs into the ground, and made a sudden stop in the car in the middle of the road. He's never been physical towards me, even at the worst of his rage, but recently I told him he almost hit me by accident when he was swinging a chair around, and his reaction was, then move. He impulsively threw a cell phone holder and it hit my knee. He bumped it into me and knocked me off balance. What support can he get for rage? He needs help, and he's willing to get it.
Yeah, that would be a great opportunity for therapeutic separation. So
Yes.
personally, I would not put myself in a situation where I have to walk on eggshells, and his rage could result in me being hurt, kids in the house having to witness or be hurt, or simply throwing and breaking things is 100% unacceptable. I would not be living with that. I will tell you. Now, if he's willing to get help, I recently got a resource on the CSAT listserv that I can share in the chat, but it is for anger management. It's for managing rage. And it's specific to, men that are sex addicts also. So I love that that resource was available. I will, if you give me a second, Tammy, I will pull it up.
I will, but and while you're looking for that, like, here's what I don't hear. Prior to discovery, and he stopped the substances and stuff, but I don't hear, and he's going to 12-step meetings every day. He's working with a qualified therapist. Like, I don't hear any recovery work in this. It's just that he stopped. And of course, like, if the acting out and the medications were numbing him out and escaping, then that kept a lid on those emotions. So I can imagine that he's feeling big emotions. Not okay to vent at you, not at all. And this is really dangerous. So, can you do it to everyone, because you did it to just you and me?
Oh, yep.
Sorry.
Yes, I
Yeah.
can.
Yes, thanks. So
Wait, it says I either have the option of host and panelists. Can you copy and paste it in there, Tammy?
I'm gonna see if I can.
Oh,
I know what I'll do. I'll
host
just
and panelists or
I got
scoreboard.
it. I opened it up and I'm gonna put it in here. So I probably didn't make you co-host. Sorry. Okay. There you go. Now it's the Anger Man online, what we do. So in case somebody's watching this later. So yeah.
Yeah. But I would say I'm so glad he knows it's a problem and he wants to get help for it. Absolutely. Like, get him in some help. But also, I would be setting the boundary with, if you rage like that, you will be leaving the home for 24 hours. And because I need to feel safe. I need, or therapeutic separation until he has rage under control, because this behavior is absolutely unacceptable. Like, not only do you not feel safe because of the relationship itself, but to be put in like that, the energy of rage is so unsafe. And he needs a healthier outlet to express himself.
You have time for one more?
Sure.
Okay. I've already received a CSAT team full therapeutic disclosure. I provided my impact and was read as restitution. It's been quite some time. I'm still very active with S&On and working my steps and feel supported by my tribe, but I cannot find our resources about building trust and vulnerability, taking baby steps to begin touch. I am so triggered and I'm reliving reels of haunting visuals of his physical affairs. Can you share books or resources? I'm traumatized. You know what my first thought was? Empowered Women's Retreat. Seriously.
It's so good, because our whole theme is like to get back into your body and have clarity about how to move forward, having your own back. But because, so a couple things come up for me. One is, if you see, like, okay, logically in front of my face, all of the action steps are happening that should be building trust, but I'm stuck reeling with these, they're PTSD. I mean, realistically, what happens in the brain with betrayal trauma mirrors that of PTSD and is that of PTSD. So you're having trauma reenactment, you're having triggers that are actually bringing up re-experiencing. So I would say, if that's a piece, I would look into EMDR or brain spotting to actually work on those exact visuals, to be able to desensitize yourself and free yourself from that, because they're so dysregulating. I've been there too. And you could be in the middle of your day and one of these visual images, some of which I created on my own, come up, and it's incredibly dysregulating. So I would say, if you could look into some trauma therapy to around those triggers specifically, it would allow you to clear some of those. The second thing is, I think of, depending on how long you guys have been out this, it might be a good time to see a sex therapist or to talk to your CSAT about Masters and Johnson have a whole protocol around reintroducing trust and physical intimacy. And they use Sensit Focus, which is like a graded task assignment to build physical intimacy back once it's been lost. And there's ways to do that have communication, have emotional intimacy, and start at the very basics. Like, we're sitting watching a movie and our clothes are on, the lights are on, and maybe we're just engaging in holding hands, right? And then you process that. I actually hate when you hold my hands like this. I like it when you hold my hands like this. I mean, you actually get into the nitty-gritty of communicating what you want. And then it escalates from there, and it gets a little bit more intimate physically each stage, all the way to the point of intercourse, but not with the goal of orgasm. So it's really powerful, I think, for couples that it's like physical intimacy has been off the table for a really long time and they want to re-engage, but they don't even know where to start. So that's by Masters and Johnson. It's called Sense It Focus. There's books on it, there's classes on it, and most CSATs and especially sex therapists are well versed in how to help you with that.
Yes. So Sensate Focus Touch, and we have talked about that on other webinars, and there's, you can Google search and find some, guides and things, but yes, a good, someone who understands sex addiction and sex therapy, can help with that. But useful. Okay. I just posted that in there. So we are done. So thanks everyone for the great questions and topics. Thanks, Erin, as always. Grateful for you being on tonight. Erin will be back in 2 weeks. Dr. Rob will be on next Monday. Oh, wait, I have to check. It's Labor Day. So we may not be on Monday. So check the schedule. I'll get it posted one way or the other. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great night, everyone.
Bye.